Before we get into how I legally dismantled this woman's life, I have a question for you. If a neighbor tries to take your house over a parking spot, is it wrong to make sure they lose their house in return? Or is that just fair game? Let me know in the comments. So let me tell you how it all happened. I woke up to the sound of grinding metal. It was a horrible, screeching noise that tore through the quiet of a Saturday morning. My heart started pounding immediately. I threw the covers off, scrambled out of bed, and ran to the front window. My stomach dropped. A massive tow truck was in my driveway. It wasn't just parked there, it had my sedan hooked up and was dragging it backward. The tires squealed against the pavement as they were forced against the gear lock. "Hey, stop," I shouted, banging on the glass. I didn't even grab a jacket. I ran out the front door in my pajamas, sprinting across the dew-covered grass. "That's my car. What are you doing?" The driver didn't even look at me. He just kept working the levers, lifting the rear of my vehicle into the air. I ran around to the driver's side door of the truck. "Drop the car. I'm standing right here." The driver finally rolled down the window. He was a big guy, chewing on a toothpick, looking completely bored. He held out a slip of pink paper. "Don't talk to me, buddy. Talk to the HOA. I have a signed order." I snatched the paper from his hand. The signature at the bottom was written in perfect, looping cursive, Blythe, HOA President. "This is my driveway," I yelled, my voice cracking with anger. "You can't tow a car from a private driveway." "I got an order," the driver repeated, rolling the window up. "It's impounded. You can pick it up Monday. That'll be $300 plus storage fees." He gunned the engine. I had to jump back as the truck lurched forward, dragging my car down the street. I stood there, shivering in the cold morning air, watching my car disappear around the corner. I wasn't just confused, I was furious. This was a declaration of war. I didn't wait to get dressed properly. I threw on jeans and a hoodie and marched 3 doors down to the big white house with the pristine manicured lawn. Blythe's house. She had only been the HOA president for 2 months, but she had already made everyone miserable. She measured grass with a ruler. She checked trash cans at 6 a.m. But stealing my car, that was insane. I pounded on her door. It took a solid minute before she opened it. She was holding a cup of tea, wearing a floral dress, looking perfectly calm. She smiled, a sweet, fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, Vance," she said softly. "Is something wrong?" "You stole my car," I snapped, holding up the pink slip. "You authorized a tow from my own driveway. Are you out of your mind?" She took a sip of tea. "Oh, that, yes. I noticed last night that your rear tire was touching the expansion joint of the concrete. According to the new bylaws passed last Tuesday, that constitutes blocking a pedestrian easement, since the sidewalk connects there." I stared at her. "The expansion joint, it's an inch of rubber. And it's my property. Actually," she said, her voice dropping to a condescending whisper, "the covenants clearly state that the visual continuity of the sidewalk must be maintained. Your tire disrupted the aesthetic flow. It's a violation. The tow was necessary to correct the infraction immediately. You could have knocked on my door." I yelled. "You towed it at 7 a.m. We have a zero-tolerance policy now, Vance," she said, starting to close the door. "If you want your car back, pay the fine in the tow yard. And please, try to park better next time. We have standards here." The door clicked shut. I stood there, shaking. She didn't care about the rules. She cared about power. I spent the rest of the weekend fuming, but I figured I would just pay the fee and fight it later. I needed my car for work on Monday. But when I called the tow yard, they told me I couldn't pick it up yet. They said the paperwork hadn't cleared from the HOA. On Tuesday, a certified letter arrived in the mail. I ripped it open, expecting a standard fine. What I saw made my knees weak. It wasn't just the $300 towing fee. There was a breakdown of charges. Violation 12B. Blocking easement minus $300. Administrative fee, $150. Towing authorization fee, $200. Emergency contractor surcharge, $500. Legal review fee, $750. The total at the bottom of the page was $1,900. I dropped the paper on the kitchen counter. $1,900, I whispered. for a tire touching a line. My wife, Kara, walked in and saw my face. She picked up the letter. Vance, we don't have this kind of money right now. We just paid for the roof repairs. What is this? It's extortion, I said, pacing the room. She's adding fake fees. What is an emergency contractor surcharge? The tow truck driver was the contractor. I grabbed my phone and called the number on the letterhead. It went straight to a voicemail that said, for dispute resolution, please attend the monthly board meeting. I wasn't going to just attend. I was going to burn their arguments to the ground. I spent the next 3 days reading the HOA handbook. I highlighted every section that contradicted what she did. I was ready to use logic. I thought if I showed them how crazy this was, the other board members would side with me. I didn't realize yet that logic doesn't work on tyrants. The board meeting was held in the community center basement. It smelled like old coffee and bleach. There were 5 people sitting at a long plastic table. Blythe sat in the middle, looking like a queen on a throne. There were about 10 other neighbors in the audience, all looking scared. When it was my turn, I stood up. This fine is illegal, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. The bylaws say I get a warning first. Section 4, Paragraph 2. You went straight to towing. Blythe didn't even look up from her notes. Section 4 was amended last month. Vance, did you not read the newsletter? You buried a bylaw change in a newsletter. I asked, but look at these fees. $700 for legal review. Who reviewed it? We consult with outside counsel for every tow to limit liability, Blythe said smoothly. That costs money. The community shouldn't have to pay for your mistakes. This is insane, I said, looking at the other board members. You guys can't support this. It's almost $2,000. One of the board members, a guy named Gary, looked down at the table. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I realized the truth. They were all terrified of her. Or worse, they were in on it. Sit down, Vance, Blythe said, tapping her pen. The fine stands. You have 10 days to pay. If you don't, we add late fees. Next item. I looked around the room. The neighbors were staring at their shoes. No one was going to help me. They were glad it wasn't them. I walked out of that room feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. They had humiliated me, and they still had my car. 2 weeks passed. I refused to pay. I was taking the bus to work, which added 2 hours to my commute every day. I was exhausted and angry. I tried to find a lawyer, but most of them wanted a $5,000 retainer just to look at an HOA case. They said HOAs have almost unlimited power in our state. Then the second letter came. This one was on thick, heavy paper. The header read, Notice of Intent to Lien. I felt sick. I read the text 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Because I hadn't paid the $1,900 within 10 days, they had added late penalties and collection costs. The new total was $4,200. But the bold text at the bottom was the real nightmare. Failure to remit payment within 30 days will result in a lien being placed on the property title. The association reserves the right to initiate foreclosure proceedings to satisfy the debt. Foreclosure. Kara screamed when she saw it. She was crying. Vance, they can't take our house over a parking ticket. Can they? I don't know, I said, my hands shaking. I think they can. If we owe them money, they can force a sale of the house to get it. We had $500,000 in equity in this house. It was our life savings. And Blythe was threatening to steal it all because she didn't like where my tire was. We have to pay it, Kara sobbed. We can't lose the house. We don't have $4,000, Kara. I yelled, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry. I'm cornered. She has us cornered. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, imagining Blythe sleeping soundly in her big house, dreaming of kicking us out. That fear turned into something else. It turned into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to let her win. I needed help, real help. I called an old college friend, Elias. He wasn't a high-priced corporate lawyer. He did property law for small businesses. We met at a diner halfway between our towns. I laid out all the letters, the photos of the driveway, and the bylaws on the table. Elias read through them while eating his fries. He didn't say anything for 10 minutes. Finally, He put the papers down and took off his glasses. "Vance, this is bad," he said. "Technically, under state law, they follow the procedure. If their bylaws say they can charge these fees, they can charge them. And yes, they can foreclose. So I just have to pay." I asked, feeling defeated. "To save the house right now?" "Yes," Elias said. "Pay it under protest. Mark the check. Paid under duress. That stops the foreclosure clock." "I hate that," I muttered. "But," Elias said, a small grin appearing on his face, "I found something else. I was looking at your HOA restrictions. They are obsessed with aesthetics, right? No flags, no colors, nothing unsightly." "Yeah, they're strict," I said. Elias pulled up a website on his phone. "Have you ever heard of OTARD?" "No sounds made up," I said. "It stands for Over-the-Air Reception Devices Rule," Elias explained. "It's a Federal Communications Commission rule. Basically, the federal government says that HOAs cannot ban you from installing antennas or satellite dishes if you need them for video or data reception." "So," I asked, "I have cable internet, but maybe you want a backup," Elias said, his grin getting wider. "Maybe you want to get into ham radio. Federal law overrides HOA bylaws. If you put up an antenna for communication, they literally cannot stop you. And if they try, they break federal law." I looked at him. Then I looked at the bylaws Blythe loved so much. "How big of an antenna?" "Pretty big," Elias said. "Up to 12 feet above the roofline for local TV, and for amateur radio, well, the towers can be massive. And ugly." I went home and told Kara the plan. She was hesitant at first. She just wanted the fighting to stop. But when I explained that this was the only way to get Blythe to back off, she agreed. We dipped into our emergency savings, money we were saving for a vacation, and wrote a check for $4,200 to the HOA. It hurt physically to write that check. I drove it to the property management office myself. I handed it to the receptionist and made her stamp a copy, received. "Tell Blythe I paid," I said. "And tell her I'm looking forward to my new hobby." The receptionist looked confused, but I just walked out. I went straight to an electronics supply store. I didn't buy a sleek, modern satellite dish. I bought a massive, old-school C-band dish. It was huge, gray, and looked like something from a 1980s NASA station. Then I went online and ordered something even better. I ordered a ham radio tower kit. A 40-foot steel lattice tower. The kind you see in industrial zones. I also signed up for an online course to get my ham radio operator's license. I spent the next 3 nights studying for the test. I needed that license to make everything airtight. If I was a licensed operator, the federal protections were even stronger. Blythe thought she had broken me. She thought taking my money would make me submissive. She had no idea that she had just funded the most annoying construction project in the history of the neighborhood. A week later, I received an email from Blythe. It was smug. "Dear Vance, thank you for bringing your account current. We appreciate your contribution to the Neighborhood Beautification Fund. Please ensure you follow all parking regulations in the future to avoid further incidents. Sincerely, Blythe, Beautification Fund." I laughed out loud reading it. You have no idea, I had passed my ham radio test online and received my call sign. I was officially a licensed operator. I had the certificate printed out and framed. I waited for a Saturday morning. The same time she had towed my car. I wanted the timing to be poetic. My brother-in-law came over to help. We dragged the massive satellite dish into the front yard. Right in the center of the lawn. Not hidden by bushes. Not off to the side. Dead center. We bolted it to a heavy concrete slab. It looked hideous. It was a giant gray eye staring at the street. It blocked the view of my nice bay window. It clashed horribly with the manicured tulips Blythe had forced everyone to plant. We finished installing it around 9 a.m. We stepped back and admired it. It was the ugliest thing I had ever seen. "She's going to explode," my brother-in-law said. "I hope so," I replied. "I really hope so." I went inside, made a cup of coffee, and sat by the window. I didn't have to wait long. At 9:15 a.m., I saw Blythe walking her little poodle. She was wearing her visor and holding her clipboard, checking for weeds. She turned her head toward my house and stopped dead in her tracks. I could see her jaw drop. She literally dropped the dog's leash. The poodle wandered off into a bush, but Blythe didn't notice. She was staring at the satellite dish. She marched up my driveway. She didn't knock this time. She rang the doorbell repeatedly. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. I opened the door, holding my coffee. Good morning, Blythe. Lovely day. Her face was purple. What is that? She sputtered, pointing at the dish. That's my new satellite antenna, I said cheerfully. I'm getting into international news. Need a strong signal. Take it down, she hissed. Take it down right now. It is an abomination. It violates Section 8, Section 9, and the architectural guidelines. You didn't submit an application. I don't need an application, I said. I'm just watching TV. I am fining you, she screamed. She was losing her composure completely. I am fining you $500 a day until that trash is gone. Do you hear me? $500 a day. Send me the bill, I said, and closed the door in her face. Blythe didn't waste time. An hour later, an email hit my inbox. It was a cease and desist order. Violation. Unauthorized structure in front yard. Penalty. $500 daily recurring fine. Remedy. Immediate removal. She had taken the bait. I needed this. I needed her to put it in writing that she was fining me specifically for the antenna. I printed out the email. Then I printed out the FCC ruling Elias had sent me. I sat down and drafted a very polite, very professional response. Dear Blythe, I am in receipt of your fine regarding my antenna. Please be advised that under Federal Regulation 47 CFR. Section 1.4000, the OTARD rule, homeowners associations are prohibited from restricting the installation of antennas for video reception. Your fine is a violation of federal law. Please retract the fine and update your records. Sincerely, Vance. I sent it. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the first shot back. I wasn't just defending myself. I was setting a trap. If she ignored this, she wasn't just fighting me anymore. She was fighting the United States government. I expected her to pause. I expected her to maybe call the law lawyer and ask if I was right. But I underestimated her arrogance. Blythe had been bullying people for so long, she thought her bylaws were higher than the Constitution. She replied the next morning. Vance, the WA bylaws are a binding contract you signed when you bought the house. We have the right to restrict structures that damage the aesthetic value of the neighborhood. The federal rule you cited does not apply to structures of this size and placement. Move it to the backyard or face continued fines. The daily penalty stands. She was wrong. The law specifically says they can't make you move it if the signal is better in the front. And I had already documented that the signal was best in the front. But she had done exactly what I wanted. She had admitted in writing that she was ignoring federal law to preserve aesthetics. Gotcha, I whispered. I forwarded the email chain to Elias. Is this enough? I texted him. It's good, he replied. But if you really want to bury her, install the tower. The amateur radio protections are even stronger than the TV ones. Make it big. Operation Tower is a go, I typed back. The satellite dish was just an appetizer. The main course arrived on a flatbed truck on Thursday. The delivery guys unloaded massive steel lattice sections onto my driveway. It looked like I was building an oil rig. Neighbors came out of their houses to watch. They were whispering. Some looked annoyed, but others, the ones who had been fined by Blythe before, looked intrigued. They sensed something was happening. Blythe came running out of her house. You cannot be serious, she shrieked. You are not building that here. Actually, I am, I said, signing the delivery receipt. This is for my amateur radio hobby. I'm a licensed operator now. Call sign Kilo Zulu 5. I don't care about your call sign. She yelled. Construction requires a permit. You don't have a permit from the city, and you certainly don't have approval from the Architectural Control Committee. Actually, I said, smiling. Federal law says local zoning laws can't unreasonably restrict amateur radio communications. It's called PRB 1. Look it up. I am calling the police. She yelled. This is illegal construction. Go ahead, I said. Call them. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911 right there in my driveway. She told the operator that a crazy man was building a dangerous structure, and endangering the neighborhood. I just stood there and waited. I had my license in my pocket. I had the FCC ruling printed out. I was ready. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. 2 squad cars. It was a huge scene. Lights flashing. Neighbors gathering on the sidewalks with popcorn. Blythe rushed up to the officers. "Officer, thank God. You have to arrest him. He is building a cell tower in a residential zone. It's dangerous. It's going to fall on my house." The officer, a tired-looking sergeant, walked over to me. "Sir, what's going on here?" "I'm installing an amateur radio tower." "Officer," I said calmly, "I'm a federally licensed operator. Here is my license." I handed him the card. "And here is the FCC ruling that preempts local zoning restrictions for radio antennas." The officer looked at the license. Then he looked at the steel beams. He scratched his head. "This is big," the officer said. "It needs to be 40 feet to get clear reception over the tree line," I explained. "It's all within safety code." Blythe interrupted. "It violates the HOA bylaws. Arrest him for trespassing or creating a public nuisance." The officer turned to Blythe. "Ma'am, the HOA bylaws are a civil contract. We don't enforce civil contracts. If he has a federal license, this isn't a criminal matter. We can't stop him." "What?" Blythe screeched. "You're useless. I pay your salary." "Ma'am, step back," the officer said, his voice hardening. "This is a civil dispute. Take him to court if you want. But we aren't stopping construction." The police got back in their cars and left. Blythe stood there, shaking with rage. I picked up a wrench. "Back to work," I said. Over the next 3 days, the tower went up. It was magnificent. 40 feet of galvanized steel rising into the sky from my backyard. It was visible from 3 streets away. It cast a long, jagged shadow right over Blythe's pristine swimming pool. It was the ultimate eyesore. And it was legal. But while I was building, I started thinking about the towing company. Something stuck in my mind about how quickly that truck had arrived that first morning. It was 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Tow trucks usually take an hour. He was there instantly. I did some digging online. I looked up the towing company, Red Hawk Towing. I pulled their business registration from the Secretary of State's website. The owner was listed as Jerome Miller. The name sounded familiar. I went to Blythe's Facebook page. Her profile was public. I scrolled back 3 years. I found a picture of a family barbecue. The caption read, "Great barbecue with my sister and her husband Jerome." "Bingo," I said aloud. Jerome was her brother-in-law. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was funneling business to her family. Every car she towed put $300 into her brother-in-law's pocket. This wasn't just annoying anymore. This was fraud. I called Elias immediately. I found a connection, I told him. Blythe's brother-in-law owns the towing company. Elias whistled on the other end of the line. "Vance, that changes everything. If she's getting kickbacks or even just directing business to a family member without disclosing it, that's a breach of fiduciary duty. It might even be racketeering if they are doing it systematically. How do we prove it?" I asked. "We sue," Elias said. "We don't just defend against the fines. We go on the offense. We file a lawsuit against the HOA and Blythe personally. We subpoena the towing company's financial records." "Let's do it," I said. "Also," Elias added, "stop paying the fines. Let them try to foreclose again. As soon as they file for foreclosure, we file the federal lawsuit. It will freeze everything." So I stopped paying. The fines for the tower were racking up. $500 a day. Within 2 weeks, I owed the HOA $7,000. Blythe sent another letter. Final notice. She was moving to foreclose on my house again. She thought she had me. She thought I would fold like last time. She had no idea she was walking right into a minefield. The day the foreclosure notice hit my door, Elias filed the papers in federal court. Vance versus Oak Creek HOA and Blythe Miller. The lawsuit alleged 2 things. Violation of federal OTARD and PRB1 laws regarding the antenna. Civil conspiracy and fraud regarding the towing scheme. We didn't just sue the HOA. We sued Blythe personally. That was the key. Usually, board members are protected by HOA insurance. But if they commit fraud or break the law intentionally, the insurance doesn't cover them. They are on the hook for their own money. I was at work when the process server served Blythe. My neighbor told me about it later. He said Blythe was gardening when a guy in a suit handed her a thick stack of papers. She threw them on the ground. He just laughed and walked away. The trap had snapped shut. The fallout was immediate. The HOA's insurance company, a giant firm that hates risk, received a copy of the lawsuit. When they saw the allegations of federal law violation and fraud, they panicked. They sent a letter to the HOA board. Effective immediately, we are freezing defense coverage pending an investigation. We will not pay to defend acts that violate federal statutes. This meant the HOA couldn't use insurance money to hire a lawyer. They had to use the money in the neighborhood bank account. Elias called me. They are bleeding, Vance. Their lawyer is charging them $400 an hour, and it's coming right out of the landscaping budget. I looked out my window. The grass in the common areas was getting long. The pool was closed because they couldn't pay the lifeguard. The neighborhood was starting to look rough. Neighbors started asking questions. Why is the pool closed? Why isn't the grass cut? I just pointed at the tower. Ask Blythe, I said. She's spending all the money fighting the federal government. Blythe tried to double down. She called an emergency meeting to demand a special assessment. She wanted every homeowner to pay an extra $2,000 to cover legal expenses defending our community standards. That was the breaking point. The letter went out on a Monday. By Tuesday, the neighborhood Facebook group was on fire. People were furious. They didn't care about my tower anymore. They cared about their wallets. $2,000. Are you kidding me? Why are we suing Vance? Just let him have the radio. Blythe is out of control. I posted one thing in the group. I posted the screenshot of the Secretary of State document showing Jerome Miller owned the towing company. And I posted the photo of Blythe and Jerome at the BBQ. Caption. Did you know every time Blythe tows a car, her family gets paid? That's why she is fighting. She's protecting her income, not your property values. The comments section exploded. It was like a digital riot. The FCC responded to my petition faster than the court case. They issued a declaratory ruling. It was a beautiful document. It stated clearly, the Oak Creek HOA restrictions on amateur radio towers are invalid and unenforceable. The fines levied against Vance are void ab initio, void from the start. Asterisk. I printed copies. Hundreds of them. I walked around the neighborhood and put one in every mailbox. Blythe had no leg to stand on. The fines were gone. The foreclosure threat was dead. But the lawsuit for the towing fraud, that was still very much alive. And now, the HOA owed me money. They owed me for my legal fees. Under the law, if you win an OTARD case, you can get attorney's fees. The HOA owed me $15,000 for Elias's time. The HOA bank account was empty. They were insolvent. The night of the vote for the special assessment was chaotic. The community center was packed. People were standing in the back. Blythe was at the front, looking pale. She wasn't smiling anymore. She tried to bang her gavel. Order, order, shut up, Blythe, someone yelled from the back. We aren't paying $2,000 because you have a vendetta. Another neighbor shouted. I stood up. The room went quiet. I have a proposal, I said. We don't pay the assessment. Instead, we remove the president for cause. You can't do that, Blythe screamed. I am the president. Actually, I said, holding up the bylaws. Section 10. We can remove a director by a majority vote of the members present. And we have a quorum. I looked at the crowd. All in favor of removing Blythe and electing a new board. Every single hand went up. Even Gary, the terrified board member, raised his hand. Blythe looked around the room. She realized it was over. She gathered her papers, stood up, and marched out the side door without saying a word. The room erupted in applause. It felt better than winning the lottery. The new board was elected that night. I was nominated, but I declined. I just wanted to be left alone. The new president, a nice guy named Tom, looked at the financials the next day. He called me, looking pale. Vance, the accounts are empty. She spent everything on the lawyer trying to fight your tower. And we still owe you $15,000 for legal fees. I don't want to bankrupt the neighborhood, I said. I'll drop the claim for the fees against the HOA. If you guys agree to cooperate with my lawsuit against Blythe personally. Done, Tom said, "We'll give you all the records. The towing logs, the emails, everything." They handed over the smoking gun. Emails between Blythe and Jerome. "Blythe, I've got another one for you at 102 Maple. Come quick before they wake up. Jerome. On my way. Easy money." It was a conspiracy. Clear as day. We went to court for the civil suit against Blythe. Elias was brilliant. He laid out the timeline. The kickbacks. The illegal fines. The harassment. Blythe's lawyer tried to argue she was acting in her official capacity. But the judge wasn't having it. "Mrs. Miller," the judge said, peering over his glasses. "You used your position of trust to enrich your family member and harass a homeowner in violation of federal law. That is not official capacity. That is malice." The judgment came down. Blythe was ordered to repay the WA for all the legal fees she wasted, $35,000. She was ordered to pay me damages for harassment, $10,000. And she had to repay every single towing fee she had authorized for the last year to the affected neighbors. Total judgment. Over $80,000. She didn't have the money. Her husband, who apparently had no idea what she was doing, was furious. They had to liquidate assets. But the best part, the absolute cherry on top, was the house. To pay the judgment, Blythe and her husband had to sell their house. They listed it for $650,000. It was a beautiful house. But there was a problem. Every time a potential buyer came to look at the backyard, they saw it. My tower, my glorious, 40-foot, steel, industrial-grade radio tower looming over their fence. It cast a shadow right onto their patio. Buyers took one look at the tower and walked away. "I don't want to live next to that," they said. The house sat on the market for 3 months. They dropped the price. $600,000. $550,000. Still no takers. Blythe's realtor actually came to my door. "Vance," she begged, "would you consider taking the tower down? Just until they sell." I looked at her. "Sorry, I'm running a long-term signal propagation experiment. It needs to stay up. Federal law, you know." Eventually, they had to drop the price to $480,000 to get a buyer. They lost almost $200,000 in equity because of the market conditions created by my tower. The day Blythe moved out, I sat on my porch. I had my ham radio headset on. I wasn't actually talking to anyone. I was just listening to the static. She loaded the last box into a U-Haul. She looked tired. She looked old. She glanced over at me. I didn't wave. I just pointed up at the tower. She looked away, got in the truck, and drove off. The new neighbors moved in a week later. A young couple. They came over to introduce themselves. "Hi, I'm Leo," the guy said. "Hey, cool tower. Do you do ham radio?" "My dad used to do that." "Yeah," I smiled. "It's a great hobby. Keeps the pests away." I kept the tower up for another year, just to be safe. I eventually took it down because, honestly, it was ugly, and I missed my view. But I left the concrete base in the backyard. It sits there in the grass, a heavy gray slab. It's a monument. Sometimes, at the WA meetings, a new board member will start getting a little too enthusiastic about rules. They'll suggest banning basketball hoops or measuring fences. When that happens, Tom, the current president, just points out the window toward my house. "See that concrete slab in Vance's yard?" He asks. "Yeah," the new member says. "That used to be a federal radio station. It cost the last president her house. Let's just leave the basketball hoops alone." And the motion is always dropped. I got my driveway back. I got my money back. And the neighborhood got its freedom back. All it took was a little bit of steel and a whole lot of federal law. I eventually took the tower down a few years later, but only after I was sure she was gone for good. But I kept the concrete base there, just as a reminder to the new board members. Don't mess with federal law. If you think Blythe got what she deserved, hit the like button. And if you want to hear more stories about entitled people getting destroyed, make sure to subscribe.